Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by Leduc Entertainment. Today we are joined by Eric Makowski, who is a brain injury specialist, a tele-therapy innovator, and the founder at Cognition Care. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be here on a snowy day.
It is a snowy day, isn't it? Well, can we start out with you telling me a little about yourself and a little bit about tele-therapy and Cognition Care?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been in the brain injury space for about 35 years. I started out doing direct care in a facility and got to know the business inside and out. And then, usually what happens is you have to either take a clinical path or an administrative path. I took the administrative path and ended up owning my own facility down in Texas, in Austin, Texas. 55 beds and a couple of outpatient centers, and it was a post-acute brain injury facility. So we were getting folks that were coming straight out of the hospital, but they couldn't go home yet, and they needed a great deal of therapy. I did that for a long time and had tremendous success with it, and then have since moved on to do some other things. One of them being Cognition Care, which is a teletherapy business for people with mild traumatic brain injuries that are typically involved in litigation cases. And, one thing that we have learned through the pandemic is that teletherapy can be just as effective and get just as good of clinical outcomes as in-person therapy treatments. So, if there's a silver lining to, the pandemic, this is one of them. In that, people can, in rural areas that don't have access to, really good clinicians or physicians, can see some of the best people in the country at this point because of the technology of teletherapy. So I'm very excited to be involved in it and very excited to be in this space. I always, from the beginning of my career till now, I always connected really well with patients and their families, and wanted to make sure that we were serving their goals first and foremost. And so I'm in a position now to be able to interview patients and families and get their take on what they feel is the most important thing that needs to be taken care of. What's the biggest deficit? What's troubling them most in their daily life? And really work with the therapy team that we have to be able to maximize their goals and prioritize their goals. So that's what we're doing with Cognition Care.
Well, and can you tell me a little bit more about teletherapy? And now you said that teletherapy, it kind of got this advancement during the pandemic. But when did teletherapy for this kind of situation, when did it begin? When did it start?
Teletherapy did start before the pandemic, and I'll be lying to you if I told you I know what year it started, but it's about 15 years old at this point. Some of the technology has caught up because we needed to be HIPAA compliant with every platform and be able to store records and documents in the same location. But it's been about 15 years now. And, other than the fact that you can't do a complete neuropsych test because of some materials that you need in front of a patient, there's about 90% of what you can do in a cognitive therapy session, for example, can be done in teletherapy. So, it's patients find it to be very convenient because it's so flexible and it's they can schedule it according to their own time.
Well, and obviously, at least my understanding of this is you don't come in obviously with a one size fits all approach to teletherapy. Is that right? Or is it a very tailored to each individual case situation?
It's tailored to every case because there's an old adage in the industry: if you've seen one brain injury, you've only seen one brain injury. No two are alike. So what we do is we will do some standardized testing to make sure that we A, diagnose a brain injury, and B, tease apart all the little details of maybe executive functioning, attention, concentration, memory, and all that, and tease all that apart to figure out what's the best path going forward. So the standardized tests are really important. They're valid, they're reliable, they're valid and reliable in person or on telehealth. So, one of them in particular is called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and that really teases apart mild cognitive impairments for people, because sometimes some of the older scales, like the Glasgow Coma Scale and the Rancho Scale, they're not really defining, in a granular way what's going on in a mild cognitive impairment. So we do these assessments to make sure that we have a roadmap and we have a proper diagnosis, and then the treatment just takes it from there. And then we'll do an assessment prior to treatment, in the middle of treatment, and at the end of treatment, to show how the progress has gone throughout the course of treatment.
Well, and could you tell us a little bit more about your approach to treatment? And obviously the people that you're helping, they have suffered, these brain injuries or some cognitive situation. But what are some of the problems that you're helping them solve? And what is your approach to those treatments?
Yeah, the speech therapy and occupational therapy have really become the leaders in cognitive therapy. So it's its own discipline within the discipline of rehabilitation. And what they'll do is they will do our standardized tests, and they will try to get a restorative function as much as possible before we teach people how to maybe live with a deficit and work around it. So the restorative function is really a lot of repetitive work. It's a lot of repeated exposure to new and novel activities that they're doing in therapy. It's research proven interventions that really get a restorative outcome. And then if we can't really get there, and we're getting toward the tail end of treatment, there might be some, compensatory type strategies, where if someone's having difficulty with their memory, for example, or planning their day, they might have a more detailed, daily planner that they use than the normal person or the person who has not had a brain injury. There might be workarounds with adaptive equipment, and electronic wearables and things like that that remind them to take medications and what the dosages are and things like that. So lots of different strategies, but we do try to get a restorative function as much as possible.
What inspired you to focus your career on brain injury care and post-acute care?
From very early start, I was interested in psychology, and when I got my first start in a brain injury facility, those folks, most of them were kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was through no fault of their own that they were injured, and they had so many deficits back in that time. We couldn't get a restorative function. There was not a lot of research out there about brain injury. It's not that old of a field, even, because we just with the innovations of flying people from a battle site in Vietnam to a hospital and getting them treatment in a timely way, and then emulating that in cities after car accidents. That's the first time that we were having people survive major traumatic brain injury or even mild to moderate severe or to brain injury. So the research is advancing rapidly. It's the things that they're doing with pharmacology and anti-inflammatory medications and things like that, even biomarkers in the industry, where that actually give you a hard diagnosis of a mild brain injury. are all advancing at a very quick pace. So I was interested because I just wanted to help people, that were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's great in my career to be able to see people make progress more and more and more every 5 years or so.
And you mentioned that you just wanted to help people, but then this goes into a question that I was going to ask a bit later, but I'm going to move it up because this is a nice segue. You said it. I was going to ask, this career path that you've taken, it's all about helping people. And is that something that was just innate to your person, to your character, or is that drive to help people something you've cultivated along the way?
I don't really know, to tell you the truth, because
Bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, my very first volunteer job, I volunteered in a nursing home, and I was setting pins at a nursing home for people that were bowling on the tabletop bowling. And I got to know a lot of the folks really well there, and the people that I served it was just a great experience for me. And I think that sparked my initiative to want to go and to study psychology at Michigan State, and to really just make a career out of trying to help people in the best way possible and serve others. It's a passion for me. So I don't know whether it's innate or I cultivated it. I think it's a little bit of both.
Hey, I gotta say now, I did some online coursework from Michigan State, so go green.
All right, go Spartans.
That's right. Now, I have to ask, now this teletherapy, it's allowing you to provide this care remotely, but providing this care cross state, and is there any challenges that you've faced because of the remote nature of the whole thing?
Yeah, during the pandemic, all the rules were down. Everybody could cross state lines at any time. But after the pandemic, the old rules went in place, and you only treat in each state that you were credentialed in.
Right.
So what has happened in psychology is there was a large group of states that got together, and they have a compact. And if you sign up for the psych compact, you can treat in all those different states. Some of the other disciplines like speech and occupational therapy are just catching up. And so it's like a onesie twosie kind of thing to get your therapist credentialed in each state. So the red tape has definitely been an issue for us. You're at the mercy of the bureaucrats when trying to get some of that credentialing done. So what we have done to work our way around that is we have really aggressively went out and found providers in each individual state when we had a immediate need, so that we didn't have to wait for our usual team to get the credentialing. It's the only way to do it, because the bureaucrats have you at their mercy.
And does finding those local care sources, does that help you ensure that care remains consistent despite this being cross-state?
Yeah, because like I said before, we use kind of the same standardized assessments. So every, speech therapist will be cross-trained with an occupational therapist to do the Montreal cognitive assessment, for example,
Right.
and so that it's valid and reliable across all, therapists. So we will have some of the same approaches and some of the same techniques that we use across, all different therapists. I'm lucky that I have a team of really skilled therapists that have done a lot of teletherapy before, even with pediatric patients, and they are just outstanding. So they're my go-to. But if we're having trouble getting credentialed in a state, we will find a practitioner in that state.
And how does litigation funding play into this business model?
Yeah, litigation funding is interesting because these are folks that have usually very often a semi-truck accident, and there's not any insurance to take care of this person and get the therapy services or see a physician even,
Right.
themselves. So the litigation funding, kind of comes in, steps in, and says, "Hey, we'll pay for the treatment and let this person get better along the way." But the the sidebar of that is that the personal injury attorneys usually love it because the clinicians are making their case for them in court.
Right.
They're documenting a brain injury. They're using research proven techniques to get better from the brain injury. And all of that shows that the patient is working really hard themselves to get better and not, malingering or anything like that. That makes the case for the personal injury attorneys. So they usually love it. And, it helps us as providers to, be able to get paid in a timely way too, because we're out, a little bit of money every time they see somebody in therapy.
And this may sound like a completely ignorant question on my behalf, so forgive my ignorance, but what sort of technologies are used to prove that a traumatic brain injury has taken place? I guess legally speaking.
Yeah, legally speaking, there are some imaging techniques that can be done now that are beyond the CAT scan and the MRI scan, and it's called a functional MRI, and it actually shows activity in the brain, which areas of the brain light up and which don't light up under normal kind of stimuli, sounds, questions, just different prompts while they're in the MRI machine to kind of fire their brain. There's also biomarkers for early detection right now. And what those do is they show neural inflammation, and other physiological responses that can be tracked, so that there can be an early diagnosis and early intervention for, a lot of times it could be hormone therapy that needs to be implemented right away to get the inflammation down in the brain. And the more inflammation you can keep down in the brain, the better, because then you have a better chance of making new neuroplastic connections all along the way and relighting up old pathways and things like that.
And could you speak a little bit more? That's really interesting. Could you speak a little bit more about the importance of early diagnosis and catching things early in that situation?
Yeah, for a long time in the industry, there used to be an adage that, you had to really make a lot of your initial progress in the first 6 months following a brain injury. And that's because there's this window of time when the brain is really receptive to getting new stimuli, new novel activities, and all the neuroplastic things that are done: quality sleep, proper nutrition, exercise, and all those things. The brain responds in a certain time frame. Current thinking on that is that people retain the ability to have neuroplastic changes for a long time, but there's still a very timely a time response for the physiological changes that happen in the brain, especially, like I said, the inflammation, so that they can choose the exact type of intervention, medical intervention, to get to an individual so that they reduce the chances of further problems down the road.
Well, you spoke a little bit about the technologies that are being utilized currently.
Yeah.
But looking to the future, how do you think those technologies are going to advance and evolve in the future? Where do you think the technologies are going to go? I mean, there's a lot of emerging technology coming onto the market right now, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of wearables. There are neural prosthetics, that connect directly to the brain. The one I'm most excited about, though, is the regenerative medicine. And that is the ability to grow new gray matter, basically.
Wow.
And if you can do that in a robust way, the therapies that we have in place now for cognitive therapy, for example, can light up those new and fire those new pathways and get a new hardwired connection in that new part of the brain that is grown. So, there's very limited studies in primates on that, but they did find out that they could have some amount of growth in the gray matter.
Wow.
But without an intervention that fires that neuroplasticity, all those hardwired connections, that new part of the brain can atrophy and die pretty quickly. So, it's like it's like the old adage that you got to use it or lose it. It's like that in brain injury. You got to keep firing those neural pathways to get hardwired connections.
Now, we've talked a bit about traumatic brain injury, but is there application for this teletherapy, for these technologies that are being utilized? Is there application for that in, say, caring or treating things like dementia or Alzheimer's?
Yeah, there really is. Especially for folks that don't have access to, maybe a gerontologist that is dementia trained. One thing that the elderly really kind of struggle with their dementia is just consistency of their expectations of what happens throughout the day. So some of these technologies and some of this intervention can really kind of fill in the blanks with some of the things that are happening day to day within a home or within, we've seen lots of home care stuff develop recently where people can stay at home with dementia, mild or moderate, and still get a lot of prompting if they are reminded through a wearable that they need to go online. And as long as they have a good internet connection, they can have a pretty good experience with telehealth. So yeah, it's through even with counseling. Counseling I think has led the forefront of telehealth. So a lot of interventions that they do, it's not just talk therapy, but like cognitive behavioral therapy and neurofeedback. They can do all that on telehealth now, and all that benefits everybody, really.
And this may seem like an out there question. You might think, I don't know about that one, but this is just something I'm kind of interested in. Is we talked about all these emerging technologies. Do you think that there's obviously kind of the big buzzword that the emerging technology that everybody's talking about right now, AI? Do you think that AI will have a role to play in these therapies and in these technologies moving forward?
Absolutely, Adrian. AI has the potential to take vast amounts of data from brain scans, organize it, and tell and instruct the therapy team what interventions need to happen. So we're just at the beginning of that because the information from the kind of advanced imaging techniques, the functional MRIs and things like that are so new that there's not a lot of places that actually have the machine, the 3 Tesla machine, and the protocols that go with it. But AI is definitely part of the future here for brain scans and coming up with the initial treatment plan.
And can you tell me a little bit? This might seem like I'm backtracking a little bit, but I guess we didn't really touch on it. Was there a moment where you really decided, I need to found something? What was the moment where you decided, I need to found cognition care? Was there a moment where you decided that this needed to be, for something more?
Absolutely. I had a small 7-bed facility, based out of a home that was completely converted here in Kentucky a few years back. And during the pandemic, people did not want to come to a facility because they were, especially in the initial phases of the pandemic, they were afraid they were going to catch COVID and die. And so we converted all of our therapies to teletherapy at that time and started serving lots of different folks. And I saw its effectiveness in real time. And I saw that the people that got teletherapy were excited to see their therapist. They made their appointments more frequently, and they didn't have to leave their home environment to go to some place that was, where they're living with strangers and have to maybe share a bathroom or something like that.
Right.
So I saw firsthand, that business, eventually went out of business because of the pandemic, but I saw firsthand that this needed to be done. And then you add the fact that you have people in different locations that don't have access to, say a physician doing an independent medical exam from Craig Hospital or from someplace, across the country. But we could get that physician to them We could do a telehealth independent medical exam. So, like a lot of things, there's always a silver lining to, one door closes, another one opens. And I just felt this was a really needed service.
Absolutely. You've had a decades-long career. You've been a pioneer in the teletherapy space. Can you tell us, now you must have thousands upon thousands of stories of people you've helped, but is there one that looking back really stands out as an example of someone that you really saw a transformation in as a result of your help?
Yeah, I have a lot of examples, but one in particular was we had a gentleman who was injured in a truck wreck and was not his fault. He was told, "You will never walk again," because not because of anything physiologically wrong with him in the spinal cord or his legs, but because the part of his brain that controls his legs was not working. He came in through medical transport into the facility that we had at the time. Was highly motivated to walk again. Highly motivated. He was a construction worker and he had young kids, and there was a lot of reasons why he wanted to walk again. We started firing those neural pathways and started to light him up to the point where he could wiggle his toes. And then a few weeks later, he could move his feet or with his ankles. And eventually, after about 16 weeks, he walked out of that facility when he went home. And I still keep up with him on Facebook a little bit. And he's a big barbecue guy like I am. And we share recipes all the time. And he's next to the grill, standing out there in the cold or in the heat and grilling. And I just love it. That one gives me chills because to come in and be told that you never walk again and walk out of that facility was great.
So obviously, when you have a success, you have these emotions that are tied with it, right? You still talk with this guy, you still keep up with him, share recipes. But is in situations where it's not going well, is it hard to separate at the end of the day your emotion from what you do? Like, is it hard to take off that hat and set it aside and then say, okay, now I got to go do family time? Or is it hard to separate your own emotions away from the case, or is it just always wrapped up in it?
It's always wrapped up in it. You're constantly thinking about how to help this person. What can we do different? Are we asking the right questions? Are we getting the right interventions? Do I need a different specialist to come in and help? Yeah, it's always on your mind. It's very pervasive. Like I said, it's better. It's a lot better than it was, say, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. The research and the rehab and industry has just gone leaps and bounds into helping people with restorative function. But there's always that one or two that are difficult cases, and it does weigh on you a little bit.
Absolutely. But let me ask again, when you do have a great case like that, does it make it all worth it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the best feeling in the world.
That's awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for talking with us. This has been absolutely incredible. I mean, this has been really interesting conversation. If anybody out there listening could use your services, could use your help, could use the help of Cognition Care, where can people reach you? Where can they find you?
It's real easy. They just have to send me an email at eric@cognitioncare.com. And I will be on it. I'm on that thing 24/7 just about.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for stopping by the show. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrian. It was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit presented by Leduc Entertainment. Thanks again, Eric.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.